好，那我来介绍下一场11点的讲者。那我们这场的讲者是 Benmergui， 他是算是很早期就投入独立游戏的开发。那在之前呢，还有一款很知名的作品叫 Today I Die， 是2008年就推出的一个 Flash 作品，然后当时也被认为是这个艺术游戏的先驱之一。那后来他陆续制作了 Fidel Dungeon Rescue 跟 Storyteller 的原型，然后在最近1-2年呢，再推出了这个 Storyteller 的正式版。好，那我们用非常热烈的掌声来欢迎 Daniel。
Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Okay. First of all, how many of you have played Storyteller? Played it? Okay, lower your hands. How many of you have not played Storyteller? Have not. Okay. So the first things we're going to do is play a bit of Storyteller. Okay, so Storyteller is a puzzle game. It's a puzzle game where you build stories. So, oh wait, so one thing I can do, hopefully. Does this look right to you? Is this fine? Okay, right. Now I cannot read the text in the game, so. So the way Storyteller works is that we give you a title, the one at the top, and then we give you characters and settings. And what you're supposed to do is build a story plot using the characters, by putting the characters into the frames that fulfills the title, right? So hopefully it says that Adam starts alone, right? As you can see, whenever we place a character, he just reacts to things, right? He does stuff. So Adam starts alone. Now, if you put it here with Eve, they fall in love, right? And now, he's heartbroken, but this is not what we want, right? He's heartbroken because his love died, but this is not what we want. I mean, he dies happy, right? So we turn it around, and it's hers that is heartbroken, but he dies happy. He was happy, and then he died. Then as you make progress in the game, the story started getting more complicated. And in this case, you know, there's a tragedy with a happy ending. And a way to make a tragedy is for somebody to care about someone else and having that person die, right? So, for example, we do the same thing we did before, and then one of them dies, right? But now, you know, there's a problem that she's sad, right? But we need a happy ending. So for this, there's a special setting, and each one of the settings in the game change the context of what happens in that frame. So in this case, is for bringing people back to life. So he comes back to life, and then you get a happy ending, right? Then, as you make, as you go further into the game, we introduce new characters that do things like, for example, this character is not very fond of being rejected, right? So, what happens if these two characters marry, and then she tries to marry, say, the guy, right? She gets rejected because he's already married, right? But she really does not like it. And she can do things that the other characters can't. Like poisoning the wine, right? So now, if she comes here to drink wine, she dies, right? And then you fulfill that title. But then other things can happen. I will show it to you later. But, you know, anybody can drink the wine. Like, oops. Let me show you if I can find it without being able to read the titles. I should be able to, maybe. No. This is chances. No. And I think I went too far now. Okay. I will get this. So this is a mansion. This is a cliff. Yeah, here. So one of the ideas that we wanted to have in the game is deception, you know, lying to somebody. But this game has no dialogues, right? So how do you deceive someone? And in this case, the queen needs to get married. But there's a problem, which is that the queen is, you know, not easily impressed, right? So now the baron needs to do something to try to seduce her, right? But there's not much he can do. I mean, he can be an asshole, but that is not going to get him married, right? We need him to get married, and we need to impress the queen. So one trick that he can use is this suit, right? So now he's disguised. This is also not going to get him married. But what he can do is lock her up, looking like that, take off the suit, and they're going to rescue her, right? And now they can get married, right? As you progress further in the game, there's also different types of setting. Like we have also these mystery murder levels, right? And then the detective can here and find the fingerprints and get him locked up. But also this can happen, which is you can shoot her instead. And he touches his gun. He really likes his gun. He loves his gun. But he loves it too much, so he touched it. And now the detective is going to think it was him, right? Okay. So and in this vein, the game explores the other different settings, like the castle. We have also Christian biblical stories. Right? There are levels about that. And in any case, I mean, it keeps going in the sense that the titles get more sophisticated and the characters can do more things. So this is how Storyteller works, right? As you can see, it's not the usual game. It's a different game, right? So what I'm going to talk today is about that, about original games, and I'm starting by the conclusions. So you don't need to wait until the end. You can see the conclusions right now. So I'm going to read them out loud just for the sake of the recording. One of the conclusions is that when you make an original game, a game that nobody has tried to do before, you will have to solve problems nobody else solved before, which means you cannot look up to other games to know what to do. You have to figure things out for yourself. And the big potential reward is that you can find an audience that nobody noticed before. That means that there's people out there that may be interested in this new game you're making, but they didn't know about it, right? So let's see what happened with Storyteller in particular. I'm going to share some numbers about the game. So what you see on the left are the downloads on Netflix. We made a deal with Netflix. The way it works with Netflix is that they give you a lump sum of money, like just a fixed amount of money that you sign up, and then you don't get any sales money. So yeah, don't think that I'm not that rich, okay? But Storyteller turned out to be the second most popular game on Netflix, just below GTA, and way above SpongeBob, right? So we beat SpongeBob. So the game definitely found an audience in Netflix. But also on Steam, what you can see there is the amount of copies sold, right? So this is about 400,000. That's probably about $4 million, US dollars. And in Nintendo Switch, we sold about 100,000 units as well. Now, that is a lot of money. It's several millions of dollars, US dollars, right? The good thing is that we are not a studio. We are just a team. We are 3 people, or we used to be. We are 3 people, but the way I work, the way I want to make games is to make the games, not build a studio. The problem when you build a studio and you start hiring people is that then at some point you start working for a studio. You're no longer making the games. You're working to keep all the people in your studio happy and with the job, right? So since I really like making the games, I only assemble teams for each project. That means that when I start my next game, I'm going to have probably a different team. In fact, we do not even have a name. We have no studio name. So whenever I have to fill the studio name, I just put my name on it or somebody else's name on my team. No studio name, because I do not want to have a studio. So, and the way it works is that we share, I share profits with my team. So they are part of, they get benefits and they, are well paid, but they are not employees of mine. We're all partners. And then we hire collaborators to do specific things. Now, one thing that I want to point out is that I come from Argentina. Argentina is that thing over there on the bottom left that says Argentina in it. It has a star. We are over there on the left, top. And on top of it, on the left of the United States, is San Francisco. So one thing I want to point out is that you guys are closer to San Francisco than I am. Only by a bit. And even though Argentina is probably a more Western country than Taiwan, we are third world. And we are third world for the Americans as well. So the opportunities for funding that we have are not great. Because we live very far, we're considered a third world country. But I was invited here to talk about design. So we're going to talk a bit about design. Like, how did we make Storyteller from the beginning, right? Because you're looking at the final game, and it looks fun, it looks simple, right? But it was not simple to make that game. So when I started, I had an idea. I really wanted to make a game about stories. And by saying about stories, I mean something that players can play with. It means I want my players to play with stories, not be given a story, not being delivered a story, but being able to play with the stories themselves. That is the core original idea of Storyteller. And I wanted the game to have all of those concepts, like love and heartbreak and infidelities and jealousy, betrayal, murder, power. I wanted the game to be about those subjects, right? Which are not often covered in gameplay, right? You have many games with love and death. You can, Final Fantasy, the Baldur's Gate. You have plenty of story that goes through all of these subjects, but they're not really gameplay, right? You're not playing with it. You're just making choices that lead the game to show you a story about those subjects, but not the subjects themselves. So I wanted Storyteller to let you play with those ideas. One big restriction that I had is that I cannot steal from other games because I want to make something different, right? I cannot steal from other games. And this is very important. It's very hard when you have problems and there's no game you can look up to and say, they solved it this way, so I'm going to copy that or improve on that, right? I need to, whatever problems I find, I need to figure it out completely by myself, by ourselves, with my team. Like on the left is a small image from The Sims, which also lets you play with stories a bit. But the way they do it is that they give you a system that has some hidden numbers, right? That say how happy the characters are, how hungry they are, and all that, right? So you're not actually playing with stories. You're playing with a system that The Sims is giving you to try to build stories on top of it, right? But I did not want that. I wanted you to play directly with what you think a story is, not with system that mimics stories or allows stories. And the other problem that I had is that I did not want to make a giant database of storytelling, right? Like Baldur's Gate is. They need to take care of all the branches, all the things, all the choices you make, all the stuff you do. They have people that need to add something, some consequence to what you do in the game for each one of your decisions, right? But the problem is it's a predefined story, right? I did not want to have a big predefined story. I wanted you to be the one building the stories. So the first problem that we solved, which I'm very proud about, is how do you allow people to play with a story, right? How do you modify a story? And the first problem that you have is that if I have animations, right, and I need to walk up here and try to, talk to these characters and fall in love and all that, that takes time, right? You need to wait as a player. You need to wait for me to walk up there and fall in love with somebody else, right? And then look at the animation of what happens afterward. And then for each change that you make, you need to start again, like Baldur's Gate, right? If you want to try a different thing, you need to go back and do all the stuff in a different way, right? I did not want that. I wanted you to be able to play with the story immediately, to be snappy, like right now. I want to see the change right now. And the comics grammar actually brought the solution for that. Because there's two things that are very interesting. First of all, you can see the whole story in a single image. You can see the past and the future. You can see everything that happens in the story at a single glance. So if you change the past, the future changes immediately. You can see the effects immediately. That solved a very big problem, which is how do we deliver the story that you're making, right? And also it makes it so, like the place that you place the characters only matter in terms of meaning. Like if you put both characters in the marriage setting, it just means that it's two characters that are going to fall in love. It doesn't matter if you put them a bit more on the left or on the right. It doesn't matter. Like the placements only matters in what it means. Also, it gets rid of a lot of animation and voice acting. Like if you look at the image on the right, on the left, sorry, you can see that both frames are very different. But your head, your mind can piece together what happened there, right? There was a murder, he was axed, right? And you can tell, but I'm showing you two very different images, and still you can piece together what happened. So the animation of the story is happening in your head, which means I do not have to do it. So what we are doing in Storyteller is putting all the effort of imagining the story onto you. So we don't have to do it. That's why we only have one artist in the game making everything. So the way it started, this is the first prototype of the game. In fact, I have it around here somewhere. So the way it started, my first idea for it was like, okay, it's going to be a comics grammar kind of game, but how does it look like and how is it structured? So my first idea was to do the introduction, conflict, and ending 3-panel structure, like stories, classical stories. And all you can do is move characters around, right? So the characters born on the left are the good guys. The characters born on the right are very angry, so they turn into the bad guys. And you can move them around and stop them, and it changes the future, right? So if the good guys get locked up, it's a bad future, but then if the bad guy gets stabbed, it's a good future, right? So this seems like a good start for the game, right? But I wanted more. So after that, there were many years of iterating over this idea and doing iterations. Like in this case, you can see me go from the original prototype into something that looks like it has a system, right? So there are characters in a toolbox, and there's a state of how the character is feeling right now. So it's starting to shape a system. And also, I started considering having goals, right? So I give you a goal. In this case, there's a heartbreak at the end of the level. Then after that, I read this book, which tells you all the communication symbols that comics use, which was very useful for Storyteller. We use the ideas in this book a lot. And then, instead of doing it this way, I started to use these symbols, right? To communicate part of how the characters are feeling. And now there is a horizon, so there's perspective. So the game is starting to take shape. Then a few years after that, I decided that it was better to have more expression in the faces. Here you cannot see anything in the face, right? But now you're starting to see some expression in the faces of the characters. And also we started to simplify the user interface a lot. Then on the next iteration, several years later, we did an interesting thing, which is to simplify the titles into goals. And now you're starting to see that this is turning into what Storyteller is. We also had this text caption that explained what was happening on the frame. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But then the artist joined the team, and we needed to decide what the game was going to look like. So the first attempt was to do something like a pixel art, like illustrated pixel art kind of style, but it felt too gamey. And we wanted for Storyteller to feel special, as the game is, right? So pixel art was not good. And then we tried this illustrated, like cute style for the characters, but it also felt like a casual game, and we did not want Storyteller to feel like that. So we went crazy with ideas. We're like, let's try crazy stuff. And then we did this ancient style on the left with very long characters, which looks cool, but you cannot tell what the characters are doing. Their faces are too small, right? So it was not good. And on the right, it looks awesome, but it's very hard to read what's happening in here. And also, it had meant that whenever you move the character, all the stained glass would have to shift around, and it would be very distracting and not the point of the game. So at some point, we came to the conclusion that we needed the characters to be the focus of the game, because those are the things that you place in the frames and the more interesting aspect of Storyteller. So we started adding more expressions and more size to the characters. As you can see, the characters are starting to get bigger here. Then we jump from this black and white style into a color thing. And at this point, we realized that a good idea was to make the backgrounds very dim, very like gray, dimmed out, and the characters very bright. So you could tell what are the things that you can grab and you can drag and drop in the game. And finally, after a few years, we settled on this style, which has even bigger characters and a simplified UI. And also, at this point, also we realized that we needed more than 3 frames, right? You remember, we started with 3 frames because it made sense, but it became too limiting to make some stories. So we jump into the 6-frame structure, and then in the game, at the end of the game, we jump into an 8-frame structure because we needed even more options, right? More possibilities. One takeaway that I had from this game, and watching people play Storyteller, we play tested this game a lot, watched a lot of many hours of people playing this game. And one thing that we noticed is that people maybe have trouble learning how the game works at first, but everyone, and not just gamers, everyone is very good at learning the inner rules of characters and stories, which, if you think about it, it makes sense, right? We watch many different types of TV shows and movies, like science fiction or romantics or horror, and in those kinds, some of those movies and TV shows, characters sometimes do stupid things, but it's fine that they do stupid things, because those things are expected as part of what you expect from that kind of story. And you learn that what makes sense, right? So making Storyteller, what we notice is people learn how the characters are going to behave without us having to train them. as if I show you, like, this is the tutorial of Storyteller, right? There's this text here telling you make a story with this title. This is one of the tutorials. Then we tell you that these are settings. And then later on, we tell you that you can use less than 6 frames somewhere. Here. Those are all the tutorials in the game. There's nothing else. We never explain to you how the game works. We are confident that people can figure it out. If they find the first levels engaging, they're going to figure out the rest, no problem. I mean, we needed to design the game so this was possible, but people are very good at learning arbitrary story rules. People are really good at it. So, some examples of design challenges. I'm doing on time. Well, that's perfect. So, when you think about death in the context of stories, there are many aspects to death. You can die of a natural death, right? Somebody can murder somebody else. Somebody can murder somebody in secret. Now, you can murder somebody in public by executing them, right? There's suicide. There's a death by accident. And then is what happens after death, right? So those are questions that stories deal with all the time. And we wanted to have them in Storyteller. So as you already saw, I mean, we express natural death with the gravestone, and this is fine, right? I mean, it makes sense and all that. But what happens, like, what happens if I do this? I think it's this level. Those that play Storyteller cannot talk, okay? What is going to happen if I drop this character here? What would happen? Right? She's already dead. So what is going to happen if I place her here? Exactly. But ghosts brought a bit of a problem, right? Ghosts cannot actually do anything. They're very inert, right? They don't fall in love. They just scare other characters, right? Unless they are angry, which is a special case. Like in this case, right? Unless they're angry, they don't do anything. So we had a problem because at first the ghosts look like characters, look like blue characters, right? And people expected ghosts to work like a character, right? They should be able to fall in love or murder people and do things. But we did not want ghosts to do that. And we struggled with that for a long time, not knowing what to do. And it turns out that the answer to this design problem was just to close their eyes. I mean, it's weird, but for some reason, since the ghost has his eyes closed, you don't expect him to do anything. Like, the expectations of what the ghost should do are lowered because they're not looking, right? They're not actively looking at things, so they being inert makes sense. You look at it and think, yeah, I mean, it's a ghost. It's not doing anything. Unless he's angry, right? Yeah. But then we had the other types of death, right? Like, we had murder. Like, in this case, this is one way to murder somebody, right? The problem is you can have an accident, right? She was not trying to poison him. She was trying to poison her, right? So this is a way that we found to model accidental death and a certain type of murder. Later on, in the... Okay, let me see if I can get what level it is. Okay, so one thing that we have is a guillotine, right? But there's a bit of a restriction to using it, which is that you need to be crowned to use it, right? So often what you need to do is do a very complicated thing in order to get characters to get executed this way. So it's not like just being dead, right? It's not like being murdered or shot or anything. In order to execute somebody, first you need to have the crown, and then that allows certain types of story to happen. Like in this case, if I want the Baron to be able to execute the queen, I mean he doesn't have the crown, right? But one thing that he can do is lock up the queen, take the crown for himself, and then go execute her, right? And yeah, and then go execute this guy too, because why not? But I had to do this in order to be able to execute somebody. So this is this way of representing execution means that you need to have power. So we are representing the concept of power by having the crown. And having the crown allows you to do things like executing people, right? So many stories are around you trying to steal the power for yourself to be able to do things like executing people. Then of course we have simple death, like the kind of death that you kill and nobody notices ever. This is I really like this level, right? Because you need to have several deaths, and there's only 2 characters. You need to keep reviving them, and it's like, what? Just die. Yeah, so dealing with death, we need to deal with that. And suicide is an interesting case because one of the most emblematic stories is Romeo and Juliet, right? And that gave us the idea about how to deal with suicide, because suicide is complicated, it's delicate. You want to be careful with how you represent it. So shooting yourself is gruesome. And jumping off a cliff is boring. So we did it. We ended up doing it with poison. Like in this case, this is like Romeo and Juliet. So one of them dies, and the other one is heartbroken, right? So she drinks the poison and dies herself. Now he comes back to life, and he's like, what? And now he drinks the poison, right? So this was an interesting way to represent suicide. Another one that is interesting is love, right? Love is very complicated. The section that deals with love in the story simulator of Storyteller is the most complicated piece in the game. Like the most complicated simulation code that we have is about love. Love has a lot of very subtle details to how we expect love to work. Like one of the interesting ones is, how do we represent love affairs, right? Because one problem that you have, is it the king? No. How do you represent love affairs versus marriage, right? So one problem that you have is that if we represent love this way, right? I mean, it makes sense. There are 2 characters, there's a heart, they're married, right? But now with the affair, the problem is that we cannot do the same thing, right? Because if we do the same thing, it's going to look like marriage. And you're going to think that they're married in the affair too. So we had a visual solution for this, which was this. They're just giving a flower to each other. This represents sex, okay? But it's just a flower. And things get complicated, yeah. I'm going to play this just because. Is this a promotion one? I think it's a promotion one. I cannot read the text, but I'm going to guess this is how it goes. So she sees them and she cages the maid. And then he frees her. And she tells him, she locked me up. And then he's like, you're not doing that. I don't like that. And now I'm free, right? He could not do that before because he was like Like, sorry, you know, I'm married. But not anymore if the queen is dead. Okay. Another funny thing is that how do we represent error states? Error states means when something you do something on Storyteller that is not valid or does not make sense. Like, for example, let's go to first. Like, for example, if I do this, right? It makes sense. He gets heartbroken, right? But if I don't do this, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, he's looking at a gravestone of somebody he doesn't care about, right? So this thing here, this confused expression, I think it's genius because it solves all the problems about error states. So whenever you do something that is weird, we just put this confused expression, right? And you learn immediately that you just did something that does not do anything. And we use that expression a lot. Like in here, for example, what happens if I try to revive somebody who's already alive, right? Like, I don't know. I think it happens later on the bush as well. Oh no, I have to use the dwarves for that. I also have dwarves in my game. I'm saying this because you laughed at that I have dwarves. I was playing the dwarf game before. I don't remember the stories. Oh, it was Salome. Okay. So like, if you're looking at an affair of people you don't care about, oh, it's not working in this version. Wait. I'm running both games. I'm running the game twice. I don't know what's going to happen. But it should work fine here, right? Okay. So he's like, I don't care about this affair. So, you know, I'm not doing anything in this place. So this was a very good solution for a very complicated problem. And also, we had to deal with another issue. Wait, no, I'm going to go back now. Looks bigger. Another issue that we had is that, like the cage, no cage here. Yeah, when you lock somebody in the cage, let's do it with the dog. Now I have a problem, which is that I cannot place her here because she's caged, right? She's in jail, so she should not be able to be here. And when I started designing Storyteller, I wanted every input that the players do to do something, to be part of the story, right? I really wanted everything that you do to be valid. But at some point, I had to give up and accept that there's some stuff that I cannot allow you to do, right? This was a mess otherwise, trying to make sense of this. So in the end, it was just like, well, let's just shape the cage. And you know, people got it. We play tested this, people got it, and it was fine. Now I guess that the people who has not seen the game will want to see this probably. Oh, there's a sad version of that actually. I think it's here. No, in the same. This is the same page. Oh yeah, this one. This one is nice. I can't read the text, but let's assume. He's very old. Let's do this. More fun this way. Cute. I mean, I don't remember the title of the story, so I cannot solve it. But this was also an interesting problem because we needed to represent aging in some way, and we ended up doing it with this frame that just makes time pass. Like people just get older, maybe here, right? No, they're both old. Okay. there's a bonus challenge here. So when we made Adam and Eve stories, we were very happy about these characters, and then we got a communication from Nintendo that they were not into the boobs. And I was like, you know what I told them is like, first of all, the boobs are just like 3 pixels. You can barely see anything. And also, I mean, if the boobs are a problem, you know, what happens with this one? I mean, there's an exit wound here. There, he's bleeding, and they were like, no, that's fine, that's good. Just get rid of the boobs. So we just made the hair longer, and we had to give that up. Okay, now everything is fun and games. I mean, we made an interesting game. We're happy with it, and also did very well. It actually made quite a bit of money, which makes us very, very happy. But you know, there was a cost to this game. Now, as you remember, this is the first prototype, right? And this is the actual version of the game. This is the years where this happened. So, as I was saying on one of the first slides, the big problem with making original games, I mean, to be fair, we did not work straight from 2008 to 2023. We did other things in the middle. It was on and off. We were working sometimes on Storyteller, sometimes on other things. But it took a very long time, a long time to get the right ideas for how to make the game work. And if I had to say what is the biggest cost to making original games, the biggest cost is that you don't know how long your game is going to take. You don't know how long it will take you to have the right ideas to make the game successful. And that may be years in some cases, right? It depends on how ambitious you are. I tried to make a game that was very different from everything else, so I made it very hard for myself. But some problems, some design problems, just take time, not just hard work. There are some problems that you can work a lot on it and make no progress. And then maybe you let some time go by and come back to the game a few months afterwards, and suddenly the solution is right there. You get the right idea. But in order for that to happen, you need to work on a problem, get stuck, and then come back later to see if you have a new idea, right? So that's a process that we need to make all of our games, actually. It's just that. It's just work on it hard until we get stuck, and then do something else, and then come back to it, and keep doing that until the game is where it is, right? So one funny thing is that we got funded by Annapurna Interactive. It's a publisher that they publish Stray the cat game, and Cocoon. I don't know if it was popular here or not. And when we signed up with them and asked them for money, they did not allow us to do this thing where we stopped working on the game. So the last 4 years of the game was like grinding just to get something that would work. And when we launched the game, it was not doing that great, actually, on Steam. But we made an update a few months after that, and the game is just doing great right now. Yeah, the thing is with the original games is that you need to be willing to get stuck. Now the question is, why do that, right? Why go through all this? Isn't it better to just grab a known game that is successful, you know is successful, and you do your own version and maybe improve on something, right? Why go through all this pain to try to do something different? And the reason is, this is the way I work, this is the way I think. It's not for everybody. But the way I see it is that, again, I'm from Argentina, right? Again, third world. I don't have access to a lot of, I mean, I do have access now that Storyteller is successful, but back in the day, I did not have access to publishers or important people, right? So the only way that I could get funded is by making small things that do not need a lot of money, right? It's easier for me to get some money than getting a lot of money to do something very big or that needs a lot of production value. But the biggest thing, the most important thing, is that by making original games, it's easier for me to stand out when I put the game out there. So it's easier for me to sell Storyteller than another vampire survivor game, right? Because people look at it. I mean, when I say it's a game where you build the stories, people are like, "Oh, really? What is that? How does that work? How does it work?" It's easier for me to sell the game, right? And it makes me stand out in a world where just on Steam, like 50 games come up every day. Like you're competing with 50 games coming up every single day. So my personal strategy is try to do games that have a novel and a different idea to them. So it's easier for me to sell it both to publishers so they can give me money and to players in that I'm offering something they never tried before. Of course, it all depends on, I also think that you need to be curious about these things. Like if you're curious about experimental games, indie games that do different things, maybe you're made to do that kind of thing. If you're not, and you just want to just do your own version of the games you already like to play, that's great. That's fine. But this talk, I thought for people who have some curiosity about how would it work if I try to make a game that is different from everything else. And to tell you that there is hope to actually make money off of those games. That's all. I have 15 minutes, so I can do Q&A, right? So you can ask me any question that you want, anything, about any subject.
好，那请有需要提问的人，请主动到那个麦克风前面排队。好，那我们刚那边场地的右边这边先开始。好，那我们那边就先第一位，谢谢。
Hello. Okay. First, I fell in love with story when I very young. And second, this gameplay let me think two similar board games. One is Once Upon a Time. In Chinese, 从前从前这款桌游。The other is Storyline. 故事线这款桌游。
Okay.
If Once Upon a Time is a very successful board game. Even it have ending card to give a goal to player, but I don't care. This type of for the player like me, we can play character, play story, play item whole day, and don't care ending.
Okay.
But when I play with most people, they don't like me, so they were confused. Once Upon a Time can give you, you can create your own story, but most people don't know how to do what I tell next. And Storyline is the difference. Player even don't have many choices. Mm-hmm. They just play card and follow the storyline, right, and chose a very simple one. It can end the game in a very short time. Then Storyline not a very successful because the type like me, I told type A player like me.
Okay.
Don't like this.
Right.
I can do anything.
Right.
The type B, the most people, they can enjoy the game once, but there are no freedom. I don't want to play again.
Right.
Even I have some choices, but it's very, very similar when I play 10 times.
Right.
So this game, your game, how do you balance the two type of player? You give player go the title.
Right. Right. So yeah.
For B, but with A type of like me, we can choose all the possibility.
Right. Right. So this Storyteller had a we needed to find a balance where you had some challenge trying to solve the levels and having some degree of freedom about how do you solve the levels. So I think in the end, we could have gone the way of a sandbox kind of game where you could create your own thing and we just give you some general goals. But we felt it was more interesting to do the more puzzle part where we take you to the interesting places where stories happen. And I think something you said is important, which is that everybody, we're used to stories, right? We're used to watching stories, we're used to reading stories, we're used to playing stories. But the moment you are sitting in a place where you have to make the story from scratch, we are not trained for that. We're, like most of us, we're not trained to do that. So when you give people a lot of tools that are not used to create stories, they don't know what to do with it. And that's why we didn't want to do the sandbox thing, because through the sandbox kind of game, you have not found the more interesting things you could do with the toolbox of Storyteller. So we decided, we went to do a puzzle game to make sure that we got you to think about the interesting parts of storytelling, right? So, thank you.
好，那我们请这个左边的麦克风，嘿。
You can also ask in Chinese, and he will translate.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
So you have a lot of character, and they have a lot of different states or tags. Like he's currently in love with her, and he's dead now. She's in the sad state. Like it must have like a lot of possibility of what a thing can happen. So how do you sort it out? Do you just mathematically list out every single possibility, or do you just go through playtest? Oh, well, this can happen. Let's fix this.
Yeah, well, we play tested the game a lot, and we play the game a lot ourselves. Like the way it works, we usually come up with the idea, right? Like let's make Snow White stories, right? Where the characters are all about beauty and competition between each other and all that. And we do some of that in the simulator, and then we play it and see what kind of situations we can create, and we add those to the simulator. Then after that, we play test the game with real people, not ourselves, and watch what happens. And sometimes people will come up with combinations or ideas that we didn't think of, and then we add those into the game. But we need to be aware of everything that can happen in Storyteller. Because one thing that you cannot do is mathematically create story concepts. I mean, jealousy, you need to program that somewhere for you to have jealousy. It's not going to come up magically out of the system. So the way it works is we try every possible combination that makes sense, right? It's not automated. We do it by hand because we want to think about what kind of stories are happening and how we need to modify the game to be better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
好，我们请右边的麦克风。
Hi, Daniel. This is Charlie. I follow you on Twitter already. And I would like to ask about the art style question. And I would like to know, have you, your team take reference from cartoon like Mr. Bean? It's very popular, maybe in the world. So it might boost up your seller in every corner of the world because it's like the general design, etc. And do you have any could share about us about the art style in a different place? Maybe in Taiwan, this art style is better, but in US it's not so well like this.
Well, I don't fully understand the question.
I mean the art style of the game.
The style of the game.
Art style.
Art style.
Yeah.
Okay. So art style. What do you want to know?
I would like to know how you design this art style.
So you mean technically how we do it, or how we design it, how we think about it?
Yes.
Okay, both things. So technically we use Flash. There's Flash like the Adobe Flash, and we make everything there.
I mean a later one. How you choose this kind of art style?
Yeah. Well, it was an evolution. I mean, you can see. I don't have all the early all the early images here, but we had some references. There is an Argentinian illustrator that we like a lot, and she sort of made characters that look a bit like this, like a bit like this. So we started from there, and I started, modifying until they fit the game, right? So Jeremias, which is the artist, I did not do the art. It was Jeremias, another of my team members. So he started from that reference, and then started to move forward. Like if I had the reference here, I would show them to you, but I don't have them right now here.
Okay. Got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, Daniel.
Hello.
I just want to know, I'm also a game developer, and I'm kind of making a game, and I'm getting stuck because I'm thinking of the concept that I want to pursuing, like a game has many possibilities that player can discover.
Right.
But I don't want to be an RPG game or an open world game. And maybe it's getting stuck. Like, the game like this does it have any future? Like,
do you mean like the gameplay?
Yes, the mechanics is I want to make something unique, right? Like maybe like Storyteller.
Right.
But I want to let the player playing times and times and never feel bored.
I see.
Yeah.
I see what you mean. Well, that is very hard.
Yeah.
One thing that I would say is there is a version of Storyteller that we tried to do once, and then we didn't do it. But it was about a theater company that was locked up by a king, and he forced the theater company to do stories for him. So one thing that I would say, I mean, we didn't do that in the end, but one thing that I would say, it's sometime providing some context, like instead of trying to make a game about stories like I try to do, is maybe make a game about one kind of story, right? So maybe it's a romance kind of game. So if you grab Storyteller and say, I'm going to make it about, romance or horror or something more specific, it's much easier to make to have ideas on how to do it, because you can use all the tropes of horror or romance as tools to make interesting situations, right? So you can have a simulator that is interesting and fun to play, and maybe you can replay a lot, but it's because all the character, or because everything happens in horror or in romance or something very specific. It's much, so if I had some advice for you that you're going to try that, my advice is find some specific kind of story, and then do the game inside of that, like your favorite one, right? And just do it inside of that, and it's going to make it much easier to find the right gameplay for it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey.
Hey.
Hello, I want to know, do you have any suggestion on how to find right people to build game together, since you don't build studio and you find different people to start different project?
Because you mean to assemble a team, to have a team of people?
Yeah, how do you find right people? Because sometimes I met some people, they say they have passion and they say they can learn and they can solve problems, but sometimes it's end up differently. Yeah.
Right. So one trick to get good people is to have money to pay them.
Thank you.
Now, how do you get money to pay for good people is a different question, right? But I would say, like, my own strategy, like my personal strategy, was to start alone and try to win an award. So one of the things that happened with Storyteller in 2011, it won an IGF award, which is it's just some prize that they give you at GDC in San Francisco in the US. I really wanted to get that prize because it got you some privileges. So for years, I worked on Storyteller and put my game in there, and it won one award, right? When it won that award, I managed to get a publisher to sign with us, right? So my strategy to get money, to pay for good people, was to start alone and try to find some way to get access to publishers. And then it took me years to do that. It took me because the Storyteller won the award in 2011, and we got funding in 2019. So it took 8 years from one point to the other because we live far and all that, right? So I would say a good way to get money to pay for good people is to start yourself or with a partner that you trust, and then do something by yourselves, and then do something that looks cool, and then try to get funded.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, and one more thing I want to say about that is that it happens a lot, that, like in colleges and universities for game design or game making. It happens very often that people assemble teams of 5, 6, 7 people, and they all break down. Like 99% of those teams are going to break down. So I guess I would say that if I had advice about that is do not sign for money with the people you came out of the university with. It's just wait a bit, and try to get to know people and get them decided to what they want to do before committing to them, because I heard many horror stories about teams breaking down after university. So yeah, be careful with that.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Hello, hi. Thank you for the talk. This is amazing. Just curious, how would you define the core problem that Storyteller is trying to solve? The problem that nobody solved before.
Huh.
How would you articulate it?
Yeah.
Like a
That's a very good question. I guess the problem is, how do we make a toy that lets you play with stories that is fun? It was everything we tried to do. Like, how do we make trying out stories fun and interesting?
And why would you be interested in solving the problem at the first place?
Well, that's also a very good question. So it all started, like, this image is not accidental. Let me show you. This is Hansel and Gretel. So when I was a kid, I had all these children's books with illustrations, right? So one thing that happened to me is that looking at the illustrations, like this one here, I wonder what would happen if I changed what happened, right? What if the witch ate both kids, right? What would happen if she released her brother instead of pushing the witch first, right? So when I was a kid, I wondered what would happen if we could change things, right? And I would look at the illustrations and think about what the image would look like. And at the time when I was a kid, computers could not do what Storyteller can do. Yeah, it was very early. I'm old. So it was unimaginable for me to use a computer to do that at the time. So Storyteller, in a way, is a way to give my children version what he wanted with the computers that we have today.
Yeah, thank you. This is
Thank
fun.
you.